It's interesting when you're building teams and how that comes together. It's really an important part of anybody's journey. You have to know what your own internal standards are. You want people around you that push you to the heights that you want to get to. You got to teach them, right? We're on the Real Estate Educators podcast, right? And you have to educate your team.
We were in negotiations, investing in real estate. They're winning, they're making money.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Real Estate Educators Podcast, where we provide the education you can build on. I'm your host, Kevin Amos. As you know, I've said it a million times, we are having so much fun with this podcast. We're helping real estate investors and real estate educators. You're out there buying properties, fixing and flipping, accumulating a rental portfolio, or maybe you're out there educating other real estate investors and helping them with their success. This is the podcast for you. I have a very special guest, the man that needs no introduction today. I know you're going to get a ton of value out of this episode, so please, 5-star review, share it with a friend. So speaking of friends, Mr. SEIDENBERG, we've been friends for a long time. You're currently the COO and General Counsel of Pine Financial Group. Been a little while to get you back on the show, man. So appreciate you coming out. I don't think we need a huge introduction here, but why don't you quickly tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, thanks, Kev. And thanks for having me back. It has been a little while. I think my people and your people were having a hard time getting together, and it's pretty funny considering we're in such a small office, but thanks for having me back on this. I'm thrilled to do it. We have just been growing like crazy at Pine, like, and trying to build teams and figure out how to scale this thing in new and exciting ways to help more people, both externally, internally. And it's been a blast. So thanks, man. This is a great ride.
Yeah, it's interesting you say build teams, because I was literally just in your office like 2 minutes ago before I took the long walk, which is about 30 feet over to this little office that I'm in right now. So prior to that 30-foot walk, we were talking about building teams. And the reason that came up is because, look, I want to extract stuff from your brain to help our viewers, help our listeners. And you have a lot of stuff in there that will help people. So I'm trying to extract that. And we didn't know exactly what we were going to talk about. And you're like, why don't we just talk about how we're doing it here at Pine? Like, what is sort of the success formula, or at least a piece of that, and see if we could help some people with that. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, that sounds about right. You're right. It's about 30 feet away. So long walk for sure. And yeah, that's what we were talking about. It's interesting when you're building teams and how that comes together. It's really an important part of anybody's journey. But in real estate, oh boy, it is really important to your success.
Yeah, it totally is. I think all professions are like that. So real estate's just an interesting one, because you could be a little secluded at times. Like, you could have a very successful business and operate as a business and pretty much outsource everything and kind of just sit in your desk at home in your little office at the house and run the entire company, right? So it could be a bit lonely at times. And the only reason I say it like that is because as you know, I just got back from a real estate mastermind where there's 8 of us, and we all are real estate investors to some extent. And this is a high value type of room, right? Lots of challenges, sometimes some tears. Like, how do we get better as dads? How do we get better as husbands? How do we get better as real estate investors? And you mentioned 30 feet ago that we were going to talk about the rule of 5. I was like, what's the rule of 5? And I asked you that, and you're like, duh, it's your 5 closest friends, people you hang out with. And I was like, I just got back from a mastermind, which kind of goes right into what you were talking about. So why don't let's just start there. What is the rule of 5, and how do we benefit from that rule as an investor?
Yeah, absolutely. So the rule of 5, one of my favorite things in life and in business. I tell this to my kids. We talk about it internally here. It is the idea that you are the sum of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. It is, the guilt by association rule. The years only go as far as the people that you surround yourself with. Our business coach goes through and tells us to do a board of directors, right? Same type of thing. The people that you're around the most are going to be indicative of your success. And I believe it. I see it in my life. I see it in yours. Maybe for some of us, we're lucky to have 10. That's amazing. But if you can have 5 that you can surround yourself with, and have an ability to be like-minded and push each other and elevate the room around you, that's when the magic happens. And as we were talking about before, that's really the key in building some of these teams. Because you're right, you can take business pretty far by yourself, not all by yourself, right? I always dispel the myth that people are completely self-made. I mean, look, you're a brilliant example of someone that has done this for yourself. You have created this world around you. And I talk about manifestation a lot, and you've done it. But you're not totally alone, whether that's in your basement by yourself in an office that you created and you've got VAs and teams and people, or someone at the title company that helps you, or a realtor that helps you. We all need support around us. And as you scale, what you realize is that you can't do it just by yourself. You can't be a band of one. And you got to bring people in that know more about things you don't, that add value, that can help you. And that really determines the trajectory of your success, is those people that you align yourself with, and how they help you reach new heights. To me, that's the joy in building a company, is really in that team building. You can have great processes and brilliant ideas, but if you don't surround yourself with people that can execute and are value aligned, I don't think a lot of it matters. And that's the thing that we talk to our borrowers about a lot when we're looking at underwriting loans. Who's your team? In our old loan origination system, we even had a whole area that people could put in their team members, so that we knew who they were working with. And boy, is that a powerful thing to know who people are aligned with.
So as a real estate investor, which is a lonely business, we have to be honest with ourselves here. A lot of it is outsourced. You're hiring your CPA, you're hiring your attorney, you're hiring your contractors. Maybe you have some acquisition people that you're hiring too, but it's actually not that common, Jared, to have W-2 type team members as a real estate investor. So what's some advice here on how do I build that five? Like, how do I build the rule of five that you are telling us is so vital?
Yeah, it's a great point, and you're so right. I mean, it is not common to have W-2 as a solo real estate investor. Most people don't need that type of apparatus, but go to meetups, go to happy hours, go to events where you can interact with people that are doing the same thing you're doing. You will find your tribe. I believe this very fervently in my soul, that we all find the people around us that we need when we need them. But you got to be looking. You got to be in the right place. And I think, and this is something you and I talk about a lot, I think it's best one-on-one, and in person. You mentioned the mastermind that you were just a part of, and I know a little bit about the history that led you there, and these were relationships that you made face to face in a room. You joined an organization that you thought would have some like-minded folks in it, and you found them, and here you are with another tribe of five that you can go and interact with, and they don't have to be your employees. Sometimes it's better if they're not, right? One of the things that you and I have the benefit of is a really good group of people around us that we hang out with socially, that we feel like our family, that we love and trust, and we can go and hash it out, right? Some of the best talks that we've ever had are around a table with some pints of beer, and we're just talking about life, business, life, how it all intertwines. I learn more sometimes in those rooms than I did in law school, to be honest with you. So you got to find them, but I think you got to search it out, and you got to be there. You got to be present.
Yeah, 100%. So let me dig in a little bit here. I'm trying to figure out how to find them, because I know I'm a member of EO. So for the listener that doesn't know, it's Entrepreneurs Organization, and there's like some thresholds to be approved for that. But if you don't hit those thresholds, there's ways to get involved. Anybody can get involved. So don't let that discourage you. But in that room, and I'm actually going to another mastermind. We're going to Mexico on Monday, and we're going to do the same type of thing. I just did it in Vail with this other mastermind. Now in Vail, it's heavy real estate, right? This one is nobody's competing. So it's a room of 8 people that nobody has a competing business. So it's very different, and it's all equally valuable. Now you tried EO as part of like a key exec type of meeting with, I think there's probably 8 people, I think 10 of them.
Yeah.
And you didn't get the same value. So EO is definitely relationship building, but it's one that you buy into. Like I had to pay money to get involved, right? I didn't know any of them. The organization introduced me to them. The Veil Mastermind, as you said, I built that. Like I built those relationships and then got invited in, and it's free. So you tried EO, you tried buying in, it didn't work. So what's some advice for someone that wants to tribe of 5 that is having a little bit of trouble?
Yeah, gosh,
That's a lot to
it's a
unpack
great
there. I know,
question.
but
No, it's a great question, and I think that this goes into a lot of things that help you in business. You got to stay curious, and you have to be willing uh, to fail. Right? For me, right, my experience at EO wasn't as good as yours, and part of it was that I found myself in a room with people that weren't as aligned as I was hoping. Our shared experiences weren't as closely as aligned, and what we were trying to do in business wasn't as aligned. And so I tried it. It failed. I let it fail fast because I didn't want to hold on to something that was a time commitment that I wasn't getting a lot out. And then I pivoted to something else, right? So I tried to go to a different group, or I tried to create something else. And I think that just like in business, just like in real estate, not every deal is going to work. Not every group is going to work. And you got to be willing to keep at it, right? And so you asked part of the question was, well, how do you find these things? And my mind, it's self-serving sometimes, but my mind sometimes always goes back to Pine. And we're a good example. We host events. We partner with other people that are hosting events. We advertise for them. We encourage people to come and check it out. Maybe it's your flavor. Maybe it's not. But it shouldn't stop you from going to the next one and finding someone else and staying curious and staying at it. As you and I both know, tenacity is what gets us to the mountaintop, and you can't have that without some failure along the way. And so I just encourage people to not worry about whether it's perfect every single time. Give it a shot. If it doesn't work out, you'll find it. Go to another one. Recycle contacts. Go to coffees. We talk about one of our loan officers, Justin Cooper, who's been with Pine for so long. His goal last year was to have, I don't know, 12,000 coffees. It sounds like he wanted to have more caffeine than any human ever could consume in a year. But it was a goal that got him out in front of people. And out of that comes relationships. So not all the coffees are going to be great, right? You go have another one. You try it again. Stay at it.
Yeah, I agree. What can we extract from this rule of 5 to help build our team, even if it's not W-2 type teams, so even if it's all outsourced, because that's still part of your team. Your contractor is on your team, right?
That's right. That's right. I think a couple of things. You have to know what your own internal standards are, right? We want to all be part of value-driven companies, and whether you're a company of one or not, you got to know what your values are, and then you got to try to align yourself with people that share those. That's what you're looking for is people that will push you, people that are like-minded enough that you feel very comfortable around them. But you don't want to surround yourself with people that just always tell you yes, right? Or that always just smile and nod and agree with you. You want to be challenged. You want to be pushed. If you're talking about the rule of 5 in a real estate context where you're building an operational team, then you have to decide, what does competence look like for you, and what does excellence look like, and what are your standards, and find people that you're aligned with. Because what we see in our business at Pine is that when people align themselves with teams that can help them push the ball forward and will execute similar to what they would have done. Now, not everybody makes the same decisions, but you're pushing it. You're making the project go. You're responsive. You're doing those things. They are so much easier to work with as a lender, and their projects are almost always more successful. What you see sometimes is that someone aligns themselves with an individual who doesn't share their values or isn't the right person, and they're unwilling to let go of that relationship for one reason or another, and it interjects friction or problems in the project. And look, one thing that we all know is when it's yours, it's your problem. I don't care if your accountant made it, if it was the person in the county that didn't process it right, your builder didn't put the flooring in right, whatever it is, you own that problem, and you're the only one that's going to fix it at the end of the day. So stay involved, get people around you that love and trust, give them some authority. and some power. It's one thing we were talking about earlier is how you empower your teams. But make sure that you're willing to make the hard decisions when it's time to make them.
Yeah, there's a lot there. So stay involved.
Oh gosh.
Make hard decisions. In any case, I was going to ask you, because I know you really wanted to talk about this rule of five because it's impacted you. And I assume it has, or you wouldn't have said, hey, let's talk about this. So
yeah,
why don't you just tell us, shoot us straight. Tell us how your rule of five, your five closest people in your life impacted your life.
Oh man, talk about a hard question because this is so encompassing. I will tell you that I know emphatically that every time I have, I don't want to say this, I don't want to be disparaging, but you want people around you that push you to the heights that you want to get to, that will tell you the truth, whether it's good or bad, give you the news no matter what, and tell you how to make yourself better. And you get that honesty and that transparency out of a group. And I think with that around you, you make yourself unstoppable. I know for me, I am exceedingly lucky to be surrounded by some of the highest quality people that I've ever had in my life. And consequently, the quality of my life is better than it ever has been. And I just see that so often. We talk about our kids. We talked about it earlier. You want them associating with people that will get them to the places that they'll go. And you see people that get themselves, we all talk about it anecdotally. Oh, well, they fell in with the wrong crowd. That's the same thing. That's the inverse of the rule of five, right? Is the wrong crowd can pull you that direction. The right crowd can get you where you need to be. And when I think about this, and this comes from our business coach, I think about the people who would be my first five calls, right? Who are the people that when push comes to shove, you want to celebrate your wins, you're going to call those people. You want to cry about your losses, those are the same people. You need advice, they're on your list, right? That's your board of directors. And just like any company, we're all managers, CEOs of our own lives. And you need people around you that can help you direct that company. And you put the right ones in place, and the sky's the limit. I mean, that's where it gets really fun. And so I love watching people do that. And I feel like one of the great things about Pine is we get to be one of those people for people and help them get along in their world too. And so we take it very seriously. It's because of the lessons I've learned by selecting the right people and seeing how that mixes up the situation and gets you to the next spot. Really cool.
Being the right people for people.
That's right. Right. I mean, think about it, man. I had this is personal. I had a big flood at my house not too long ago. And amazingly, those same five people that I would have called to celebrate or cry or ask for advice are the same damn people I called when I had a flood in my house. It was raining inside, right? I don't know how long it took you to get there, but it was less than 15 minutes. I think I got you out of the gym too, right? And then, you know who's on my board of directors. They were all in that room. Gosh, it makes you feel good when you got people like that around you.
This episode is brought to you by Pine Financial Group. Pine Financial is a private lender specializing in short-term rehab lending to real estate investors. Got a property that needs some love? We can help. We are able to offer funding solutions because we raise private money from individual investors. With more than 15 years of experience, Pine offers passive investors an alternative that provides stability, consistency, and security to your portfolio. If you like real estate but want to avoid the ups and downs and effort, a Pine mortgage fund could be a perfect fit for you. Accredited investors will experience an 8% preferred return and profit sharing. Diversify your portfolio out of Wall Street and into Main Street with a Pine Financial Group mortgage fund. Get more information at pinefinancialgroup.com. That's pinefinancialgroup.com. I kind of want to get into the law firm, your private practice law firm, because you've mentioned multiple times in this episode about maybe not making the right decision and just keep trying. And it's the grit, right? We talk about grit and Pine a lot. Yeah. So you feel like you had made a mistake and it wasn't your rule of five, right? And then you had to make a change. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. I mean, I want to be open, right? Not everybody succeeds 100% all the time. And you're right. I mean, the law firm, for me, the last time I was in private practice before you rescued me from there, it was interesting because I think that personally, I had a lot of success in going back to private practice. It's not easy, 15 years into your career, or whatever it was, 13 years into my career, to go back to private practice after being in house for so long. And it was a heck of a challenge. And I loved most minutes of it, I will tell you, not all, but most minutes. And that was my own personal development. But yeah, I was not in the right situation, partly because I wasn't at the table with the right people. And, that's not to say that my partners weren't good people. They're not bad humans. And in fact, as I still hold them in pretty high regard, and I refer them constantly. And one partner in particular, well, I'll tell you two, but one in particular, I always tell you is one of the finest litigators I know. That's separate than being on the right team, right? And for me, I was probably the right person on the wrong team at that point. Everything I think is for a reason. It was necessary for me to go back to private practice. You and I had talked about that. I wouldn't be as effective in my current role if I hadn't done that, and so I had to do it. But what became really clear, and what's interesting, is sometimes it's life events or the way the world is going. For me, it was COVID, right? We were in the middle of the beginning of the pandemic, I should say, and the world was weird. And we were all working from our homes, and some of us were scared to go outside. At least one of us on this call was a little bit timid. It's not you. And partly because my wife was a trauma nurse working in the COVID unit, and it got really crazy. And it gives you time to sit back and really think about what you're doing and whether you're in the right spot. And for me, it just became real apparent that I love being a lawyer, and I don't love being in private practice. And I wanted to align myself with people that shared my values, and made me feel good in the room. And I wasn't in that situation. And so, this opportunity came along, and uh, it was immediately clear to me, probably more immediately clear to me than it was to you, that it was the right thing. And it gave me the opportunity to pivot. But in order to do that, I had to grieve something that I thought was where I should be, right? And it was in some ways a recognition that my path that I thought I was on was not where I should be. Um, in some ways, that's a failure. I think that's all a mindset. To me, it's a huge success to be able to say, no, I'm not where I should be, and I'm willing to change. I'm willing to let that go. I'm willing to go through the pain of all that, to get to something better. And that's kind of like what I was saying earlier about the people around you. Sometimes all of us have looked around and said, "Oh man, this person that I thought was really good for me, really good for my life or my business or whatever it was." And maybe they were at the time, maybe it was a season in your life. And sometimes it changes. And you got to be able and strong enough, intestinal fortitude, as we talk about, to say, no, I'm putting this back on track on my terms. Because, look, we can all pick jobs that we work hard in, and it's a choice on whether that's something that makes you happy or not. And if you can do both at once, um, gosh, I don't know what's better than that.
Yeah, I remember so distinctly some of those conversations. And back to your point about hearing the truth and getting the correct news from your five, I remember just saying, "What in the are you doing?
Yeah,
Like, this
I
is so
know.
clear to me."
It
And
was.
it wasn't to you. So to try to help you through that was, I suppose, the best word is just it was an honor to do that with you. And look where we are now. So you made the comment earlier about, the bad group versus the good group. And I wrote an article, what was it, like 2 or 3 months ago, about peer pressure and
Yeah.
how peer pressure can be very positive, right? We learn in school that peer pressure is bad and don't fall into it. Be your own person, blah blah blah, right? the reality is being pressured in a positive way is extremely valuable. Do you want to elaborate on that at all?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I hadn't read that article until you released it, and I made my kids read it too. I believe this, right? I mean, look, we talk about peer pressure negatively because we're of a vintage where it was all about the anti-smoking campaigns and the anti-drinking campaigns and dare and the hard thing was is, oh, you'd fall into this group and they're going to force you to be terrible. And the inverse is true, right? Like Tony Robbins says, well, what if it all works out? What if you fall into the right group and they don't make you terrible, they make you exceptional? And that type of peer pressure we should all be lucky to have. And I that's when I talk about assembling your board of directors, or the rule of five. Those are the people, right, that can take you one direction or another. And if you get the right type of peer pressure, the right type of advice, uh, great things will happen, because you're open to it and you're a receiver to that type of positivity. So, it's one of the things that we do here. You do a mastermind with the staff at Pine Financial Group, and it's purely a moment for, not just a moment. You spend some good time, like an hour and a half, 2 hours sometimes, talking through it, and it's not um, negative. You challenge us, and we all need that, but that is peer pressure too, but in a very positive way, right? And I think that you need to surround yourself with people like that. I feel it. Um, what do they say? That if you're the richest person in the room, you're probably in the wrong room. If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And I never want to be either of those things. I want to be pushed. That's peer pressure. Um, but so good, right? I don't know. I remember back when I was in law school, highly competitive environment. And, I was a kid that in undergrad, I just did my stuff and I was lucky enough to get good grades, and didn't put in as much concentrated time as some of my peers. And I got to law school and I looked around and I was like, oh my gosh, these guys are actually like reading the book and taking notes. And, that made me sit up in my chair and rise to the occasion. And we all need that. That's the way that you get to be where you want, and hopefully that's in a good place. So wholeheartedly agree. Peer pressure is great. We should all have it.
Yeah, and sometimes to come up with the correct five, and we keep saying five, but it doesn't have to be, right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
whoever you spend the most time with, that's going to have a big impact on your life. And it's okay to make a mistake. Is what I'm hearing from Jared. But you have to recognize that mistake. You got to realize that mistake and then move on from people. And sometimes I got to tell you, that's some of the most difficult decisions I've made in my life, like who to limit my time with. And sometimes it's like people that you think are in your inner circle, close, longtime friends and family. But are they making you better? That would be a question I would ask myself. And I got to tell you, man, as I've gotten better at this, my life has improved, as you have said earlier. So it's just sometimes a little tough.
I think it's tough. I agree with you. It's some of the hardest decisions I've ever made, was to make that pivot. In fact, when I was pivoting from the law firm, I read a book that was called Pivot, and it was all about the ability to stay curious, stay nimble, stay agile, and make a move. That's true in all aspects of life and business. Um, and sometimes you got to know when you're in the wrong room with the wrong people, and be willing to go. And I hear you. I feel that too. I think about people in my life that were some of my closest friends, or confidence business partners at the time. Um, and that's why I think that sometimes it's seasonal. Sometimes people come into your life at the right time. They're there to learn a lesson from, or for you to teach them a lesson, support each other, whatever it may be. Sometimes that season lasts forever, and sometimes it doesn't. Um, And it's darn hard. There's no question about it.
This is the topic that we talked about this weekend in Vail. This exact topic sometimes you have to recognize, which is very difficult at times. But yeah, the pivot, definitely read that book for the listener. And for the listener, look, if you're viewing or listening to this podcast, I know you're in growth. You want growth in your own life, your business, your finances, all of that, or you wouldn't even be listening to this. So what I could tell you with a high level of confidence is you will outgrow people in your life. It's just the way it is. Okay, Jared, I can't have an attorney on the Real Estate Educators podcast without asking some legal questions.
Yeah.
So let's hear it. This Corporate Transparency Act that's got real estate investors freaked out. A lot of investors, especially as you grow and mature into your career, use LLCs for their deals. And sometimes it's one LLC per deal. We could debate when that's appropriate, when it's not, all day long. But the reality is there are times when you have one LLC per deal. So some real estate investors might have 20 or 30 LLCs, right? And this Corporate Transparency Act is a problem. So first, tell us what it is for those that don't know, and then like what's the latest updates, man?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I'll try to be succinct. That'll make you smile because it's not always a lawyer's strong suit. But I did a video on this that's on the Pine YouTube channel last year. Went through in pretty good detail what this thing did. In short, what it does is it allows or requires transparency into your corporate entities, LLCs or otherwise. And it has to do with the beneficial owners. You have to tell the government who owns the company. It is a really sneaky way to pierce the veil and expose people that don't want to be exposed. I, as a lawyer, especially if I was in private practice still, I would hate it. As someone that's not in private practice, I hate it. I understand the impetus behind it. I think that, like a lot of things, there's some good intention here, but there's other ways to get this information. And I know that those of us that value privacy, that value some anonymity behind entities for reasons that are apparent, I think, to all of us in real estate, and in a lot of ways are the reasons why these entities existed in the first place, was to give you another group, another name to operate under, right? And they're eroding that. I say they, it's the federal government that's eroding that. And it's pretty controversial. Last year, it was litigated pretty heavily. There was a court in Texas, federal court in Texas, that enjoined the act, which basically puts everything on pause, said that it was unconstitutional. The arguments were pretty well thought, I think, on both sides, but that court decided that they would enjoin this. It's gone through some other district courts as well. But just at the beginning of the week, I learned that they have now lifted those injunctions, and people are going to have to start reporting on this. I don't remember the exact date off the top of my head, and I don't want to misquote it, so I'm not going to say it, but it is in March of 2025. People are going to have to start reporting. You're going to have to tell people, the government, filing in a database, who owns your entities, who the beneficial owners are, and some contact information. The list of reasons why this is problematic is long, and I won't go into it here. But here we are.
And there's a little learning curve for me when I started going through this process. So for existing entities, or no, let me backtrack. For new entities, the deadline was much sooner than for existing entities. It was a bit confusing to me, but once you get through it once, it's actually rather simple. It's just pretty invasive, right? Because you got to give them your home address, for example, which felt a little awkward to me. But you're telling us now it's back on. We have to do it. So any entity that we currently own, even if it's been 10 years or 11 years, now the deadline is sometime in March 2025.
That's correct. Yeah, they have decided that they're going to go forward with it. My guess is that this gets litigated some more. I would be unsurprised if it got stopped again. I'll also be unsurprised if it doesn't. These are one of those things that it feels inevitable. some of the information, like you said, I think is pretty innocuous. I don't really worry too much about names out there. If you're smart enough and you want to dig, and when I used to litigate cases, if I wanted to figure out who owned companies, I usually could. Um, but gosh, that home address really bothers me. And I don't know why. The reality is that I'm sure if someone Googled, yourself, you find your home address. So it feels like information is everywhere. But the idea of the entire world knowing where you live, being able to Google map your house, show up on your doorstep just because you own a company, it just feels odd to me.
Doesn't feel safe.
And
And as an investor with
it doesn't.
contractors, I mean, there's disputes between
That's right.
rehabbers and contractors all the time. It just
That's
doesn't
right.
feel
And,
safe to
and
me.
it doesn't to me either. And I think it exposes family members to some of this. The last thing you ever want to hear is that someone used this information to show up on a doorstep and harm them. I mean, let's be honest. We live in a world where there's a little bit more violence than there used to be. People are a little bit more aggressive in some ways, and especially in real estate, you sometimes don't know who you're dealing with. This could be a subcontractor of a subcontractor of a subcontractor, and you didn't even know they were on your job. And here they are on your doorstep arguing for a payment that you thought you made. I mean, these are the types of situations that happen in real life. It's the disgruntled person that didn't get what they thought out of it. And the other thing that really worries me is the exposure of that type of information in a database that we don't know who can access. And so, certainly concerned about it. Unfortunately, it looks like we'll be moving forward with it. I got to go through it too. I got to tell you, I was riding on that. I told you I thought that thing would get enjoined, and it did. And so I was riding on it, and I was betting on the fact that maybe it would be shot down. So I haven't done mine yet, and maybe we'll turn the tables, and you'll teach me how to do it.
But you got to do all the entities for Pine, all the
That's
funds,
right.
all of that. So
All of it. It's all coming. So we're going to be sitting down to look at it.
I do want to clarify for the listener here that the information that goes into this database is supposed to be secret, right? It's not,
Yes,
they're not,
that's right.
even the court cannot order the government to release information in this database. So it's not like the contractor is going to have readily available information.
Thank you for the clarification. I don't want to be hyperbolic about it. It just does feel to me like
it doesn't feel safe to me, but because you don't know what's going to happen, but
You
we're
just don't know.
told that it's
That's right.
protected confidential information is what we're told. Okay,
That's
one
what we're
last question about this, and then we're going to have to wrap up here. But
Yeah.
one strategy that real estate investors use, Jared, to wholesale properties, especially bank-owned properties, is to set up an LLC, get a house under contract, and then transfer the ownership of that LLC, and then let somebody else close on the deal. Right? It's a very, I know this is a higher level topic and we don't have time to get into too much detail.
Mhm.
There is videos on our YouTube channel about how to do this.
Mhm.
But if you're going to use an LLC to wholesale properties, or anytime you're going to transfer member units in and out of a company, and so the ownership is going to change, how does that work with the Corporate Transparency Act?
This is a great question, and it is one of those areas that they have not really addressed to my satisfaction, because what they would tell you is that as soon as the ownership transfers, you then have to report the new owner's information. What's unclear to me at this point is how quickly, and what you do with that in terms of being able to sell the company without the contract being voided. Interesting area of the law. I think there's going to be a lot of case law written on this thing, and I think people are going to fight it. What I would tell you, though, is that I don't think that this changes the operational efficiency of doing what you're suggesting. People can still do this. There may be an additional reporting requirement after, and that always lags, right? So in most of these circumstances, that wholesale transaction will occur before the reporting deadline. And so, this is not legal advice, this is legal education. But there is the ability to dissolve an entity after you're done with it. And so what I would suggest is that people look at the timing requirements, especially if it's a single purpose entity, decide for themselves if it's beneficial for them to keep it running. But you may buy it and decide to shut it down pretty quickly, and then deal with everything on the back end. Just make sure, pull this full circle to the beginning of this conversation. Make sure you got the right people on your team. You got a good CPA, you got a good accountant, you got a good lawyer behind you. And with all those things, you will make the right decisions and be just fine.
Great advice. I was just going to suggest that it's possible to complete the transaction, deed the property out of the LLC, and then do whatever you want with the entity. It's sort of worthless at that point. It doesn't own anything. It doesn't have a contract on anything.
That's correct.
That's a interesting way to view that. All right, man. I'm going to go through my notes here. As you know, on this show, we really review notes, and you're going to tell me what I missed in my wrote down. Because here's the thing, Jared. I didn't write everything down, dude. There was just too much coming at me. And so I probably missed something. So help me out. And then final pieces of advice for the listener. Okay, so we started out, you had wanted to go into detail about leading teams and how the rule of fives really impacts that and personally. And we dug really into the personal side because I think that's kind of where the value is with this rule.
I agree.
So the rule of five might be the most important key to success is what I wrote down. The joy in creating a business or building a business success is the team building portion of it. So that's your joy. Not everyone would agree with that, by the way, but you found get out there. This is how you build your team of five or find them. Get out there. Meetups and happy hours is what you suggested. And then we talked a little bit about getting invited into a group, buying your way into a group. If you're just joining an association, that's sort of buying in, right? So if you join one of the real estate investment associations, you have your fee every year, and then you're allowed to go to the meetings and meet people, right? So that would be, in my opinion, just purchasing your way in to meet people. Totally a fantastic way to do it, by the way. Not every group is going to work. So if you're in some type of mastermind or group, it's not always going to work. Cut bait quickly. And you said, just keep on trying. Tenacity is what gets you to the mountaintop. And you're not going to get it perfect every time. You really want to look for people that align with your values. And we've talked about on this show how to do that. First of all, you need to understand what your values are. So going through some type of value exercise, everybody's values are different. Now they can align, but they're going to be different. So find out what your values are. Your five should challenge you. Get the news from them. When building a team, it says, oh, this is one I didn't really know. The two that I got is stay involved and make hard decisions. You could learn a lot more about this and moving on from a group to another group in the book Pivot. And then I sort of stopped taking notes there. So what I miss?
I think the third one you missed in building your team is you have to empower them to make decisions.
That's right. That's exactly what it was.
You got to teach them, right? We're on the Real Estate Educators podcast, right? And you have to educate your team. It doesn't do you any good to have a team around you that doesn't understand what you do, why you do it, how you do it, and where you're going. And you got to be able to lay those things out with clarity. I know one of the things we talk about in Pine is that, gosh, sometimes we think we're doing it. I think we're making it really clear, and we find out that we didn't, right? So that's part of being willing to address those things in line. But man, you got to empower that team. Otherwise, you don't have them.
So I know we're trying to wrap up here, but I'm going to share this with the listener. I'm currently reading this book called The No Rules Rule, and you and I have talked about this book, and I don't agree with a lot of it, right? I think it can, some of the things that, and the No Rules Rule, so you understand, is the story of Netflix, okay? I think there's a lot of advice in that book that would actually hurt, potentially destroy team or like a company values. So I'm not advocating it at all. But there is one thing in here I thought was very interesting. There's two ways you could lead people. And it really depends on what they need and what the company needs. So it's making me think about it the way you described empowering them through education. There's other ways to do that. So one way to lead people is like micromanage, like get up in their business, right? And sometimes, Jared, that's appropriate. So an example they use in the book is like, if you're creating nuclear weapons, that's not the example they use. That just came to my mind. But something like on oil. I just watched Landman on Paramount, right? So if you're working in the oil business, like if a mistake happens, like someone dies, right? So that's the time when you empower them. You do that through very strict systems and policies and procedures, and because it's necessary in that. Now, if you're running a marketing agency, well, you want to empower them by letting them go. You don't want to micromanage because you want that creativity to come out. If you try to force them into certain systems, they're not going to get the creativity, right? So I think we need to understand what is the best for each individual position and each individual company. So sorry to just go off on the rant, but empowering there's a lot to that word.
Oh, totally. I agree. And you highlight something that is the challenge of all of us that run businesses. It can't be the same for everybody. It can't. It cannot look the same. In your example, if you don't micromanage the process where people end up dying, people are going to end up dying. And as business leaders, it's our job to understand the stakes that we're all operating under, and to deploy the strategies appropriately. We do it in every company I've been a part of. Certain people have different types of management structures, and we know it at Pine. Some people need very clear procedure manuals. You do this, you do this, you do this, and at the end, you get this result. And for other people, marketing is a great example. You couldn't do that in the marketing department, and we have to be dexterous enough to apply the right tools to the right function. That's part of it.
Yep. Agreed. And now we need to wrap up. What's your final piece of advice?
My final piece of advice is find your 5 or 10 or 35, whatever it is. Find those people around you that will get you where you need to be. Rely on them, trust them, use their knowledge. They know things you don't. But without them, you're a sole actor in a large world, and that can be awfully lonely, as you said earlier. So find your 5.
How can the listener work with Pine Financial and how to get a hold of us?
Well, a couple of ways. We try to make it as easy as possible. You can go to our website, pinefinancialgroup.com. You'll have all sorts of amazing insights, blog posts, resources, applications that you might need if you're going to borrow money from us. You'll find our phone number on that website. You can call us. We do pick up the phone. It's something that we pride ourselves on. It's amazing how many people don't. And you can also find our team on that website, and you can look up our specific contact information. We don't have direct lines here, so if you call the main office and ask for one of us, we're likely here, and we love to talk to you. So interact with us. Tell us what you need to hear, and we will provide the content you need. And if you got a deal and you want to talk about it, that's the favorite thing for us. So give us a shout, set aside some time, because we might have some insight.
Yeah, definitely go and check out the team, because the team is growing. It's been a lot of fun, and they're all AI generated photos. So that's a little secret for the listener.
Well, behind the curtains, that
behind
AI efficiency. Oh gosh,
I think
talk about
awesome.
a home run that was. That's so great.
Yeah, go check it out and tell us what you think. I think they're great. Cool, man. Well, I really appreciate it. If you're listening, you want to hook up with Jared or anything that Pine can do, we help passive investors with, investing in a fund, something like that. We help active investors by loaning money if you're fixing and flipping or doing the burst strategy. We really do have a passion for helping people financially. So we'd love to help you out. Again, pinefinancialgroup.com. Jared, you have so much value to give. I'm so glad I finally got you back on the show, man.
No,
a little bit of arm twisting, a little bit of
we get busy, don't we? But thank you for having me. And man, congratulations on this podcast. More than 100 episodes behind you here, and gosh, it's pretty great. So
yeah, it's been a ride. It's been a lot of fun. I've learned a lot and get to talk to really cool people like you. So you've got a lot of stuff you could be doing, and you chose to finally get back on here. So thank you for that. For the listener, there's other podcasts you could be listening to. There's lots and lots of podcasts out there, and you chose to tune into this really special episode with our COO and General Counsel, and we appreciate that. If you got value like I did, you heard my notes, please 5-star review, share it with a friend, and I hope you make this day a great one. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. If you did, please be sure to follow and leave us a review. Oh yeah, and tell a friend.